changes to the agenda? Okay. We have the minutes from our last meeting of July 11th. Do you have a motion to accept these minutes as presented? Second? Second. Any discussion? Okay. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as provided, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Announcements, I don't have any. Now is the time for public appearances. Those in public who are in attendance that wish to come forward to address the board are welcome to do so. We ask that you provide your name at the beginning and limit your comments to under 3 minutes. Is there anybody who wishes to come forward? Okay, seeing that no one wishes to come forward, we will close the time for public appearances. Financial report, we do not have one this month. Tiffany was not able to complete it in time.
Chair, I did.
Oh, you did it? Oh, did you get it? Okay.
Yeah, I did do that.
It was there for review and a reminder. Tiffany will come every quarter to answer any questions we may have regarding that. So that'll be October, I think. Last month? Okay, it'll be October. Okay. We have no business reports, unfinished business. Going to news business, I've asked Kathleen to join us to give us a report on what she and other city staff are doing to help us in figuring out what we can do, determine what kind of options we have regarding urban renewal initiatives in our one area. Yes, excuse me for interrupting, but I received a text message from somebody watching this on TV, and I was told that the sound quality is very poor. And I understand. Well, who doesn't know what we're hoping?
That's not
Way it sounds. Yeah, I know from time to time they have trouble with this. The microphone. Yeah. Okay. Because what she has to say is important. It is important. Hopefully they can address that. Looks like Colleen has gone to talk to our IUB tech, and hopefully they'll get that resolved shortly. Thank you for sharing that, Jen.
I can try speaking slowly, loudly, and clearly.
Might help. Should we wait a minute or just...
Do you want to wait and see if we can resolve?
If that works. Can they understand or not?
If I keep talking like this, can they hear me?
This is cool. It's like live tech support. If that can be cool.
I let them know under control.
Okay.
All right.
Forward, hopefully it'll get resolved shortly. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you this evening again, Kathleen Asher, Manager of Innovation and Performance Excellence and the City Manager's Office. So I just thought it would be helpful to kind of recap and sort of cross off the things that were on our to-do list this evening. So you might remember back May 6th, I came with Deputy City Manager Randy Young, who was introduced as your new liaison. So we had a conversation that evening that left us with a few items on a to-do list. One was to update and get you a database of both the property owners and businesses that are in the Urban Renewal Authority. Check back in with the consultant team that did the business outreach as part of the Bellevue Corridor Vision, and then also contact Golden to see if they have some suggestions on someone that could come and talk to us about grants. So from that list, the database, we reached a goal and yielded not much, right? So Steve Glick said, I'm not sure I know somebody that would be good to help with you. So I think the homework that you guys want away from that was wanting to have a discussion about the Bellevue corridor vision, which you had on your June 24th. I think that's when I was back with you. So we had a follow-up meeting with your board leadership on June 11th. So both your chair and vice chair were there. I think the things that we appreciated from that meeting was how critical your timing is in terms of getting to a point where you have something to communicate in a presentation for council in October. The other piece to that was you're interested in kind of getting a sense of what the businesses, sort of where they are. So we said, leaving that meeting, we'll get that done for you and we'll get it done in July. We're not sure how we'll do that at that point. But what we were able to do is use the expertise of EPS to go back out and basically kind of do a sort of a check back in, 2 years later, kind of what's changed. And so that seemed like a good solution in terms of getting those interviews. So those were completed in July, and our hope is that that analysis and report is something that maybe if you have time on your agenda on the 22nd, I think is your next meeting, that would also be an opportunity, I think, for EPS to come and present those findings. I know that might be a nice sort of data point to include in your report, and I imagine something that'll be really informative as to kind of how we're feeling. The business survey, that we talked about originally made a lot more sense in terms of doing these as interviews, really sitting down and have that face-to-face opportunity. And so that was something that seemed to probably get, a combination of both information that you can kind of look across the whole area, but also maybe get you some of that granular feedback as well. And so we look forward to being able to do that. And then I think that brings us up to date. I had shared with you at the June 24th meeting that I had conflicts for both of your July meetings, but I think the work kept moving along. So we're happy to kind of share those results with you, and hopefully that helps as a data point as you think about how to craft your plan. So, are there any questions that anyone has?
So is it a survey that went out, or a survey along with some personal outreach to the property owners in this area? And did it go to property owners and to business owners, or just one or the other?
Both, and it actually was, so we consolidated into a set of standardized questions. So those were all conducted as interviews. In the case that they weren't able to connect with the business, what we've learned from our staff in economic development is the most successful day to go out and do this work is Monday. But they have a lot of resources and tools there that have helped them determine that. And so we set aside 2 Mondays to be able to conduct all of those interviews. In some cases, I haven't gotten a final report from them. In some cases, a few of those might have been by phone. One of your largest property owners is, of course, out of state. And so being able to do kind of that check back in after 2 years seemed like a very logical approach, and I think yielded some good conversations for them. So as they pull together that report, it will be, I think, an opportunity for us to kind of see where there may be some similarity. All in all, I think what they heard is that everyone is doing pretty good and liking their location. So it'll be interesting to kind of see, where the questions basically were, if there was something that could improve you doing business here, what would that be? And so really having sort of that open-ended conversation and really engaging both the businesses and property owners in that more interview style.
So, when do you think that report will be ready to read?
So, I think the report will be ready for your 22nd meeting. The deadline that I've given them is in advance of your packet, so that's usually about a week before. So I've asked them to have that report completed by the 15th. That's usually when we like to get that information out to you.
And is that the same work that's contemplated by this contractor we're going to look at later? Okay, so we're just reviewing either of this work? Yes. Okay. Joseph?
I have the same question as this was the survey we were talking about last time.
Yes. Carol?
Go ahead, Bill. My question is simply, will the interviews be summarized or that the results will be individual interviews?
I would imagine that the report will include both. And I can, do you have a preference?
I think it might be useful to see the individual interviews.
Right, I would imagine that you would want both that granularity and then, of course, where there's commonalities, right? If there's any sort of themes that you can gather from it, that's my expectation of what we'll be looking at, so.
Kelly, is this something that your department is doing anyway, or is it something that's being done as a result of budget?
So coming out of the meeting with your leadership, that this was a clear need, and so again, being sensitive to your timing, that's sort of the directive that we walked out of the door, like, this is the thing you need most to work towards a report, so let's figure out how we can get you this piece.
I guess I'm a little miffed that we had no input into the survey questions, and we've not even discussed as a group what it is we expect to get out of it. So how do we even know that the survey questions are going to be the right ones to get where we want to go? And I just...
How we got here was, Cindy and I met with Kathleen and the city manager, and we discussed, what our challenges were to meet the city council's deadline. And through that, they came up with this plan, and I'm not sure Hoping everybody can hear us now. We get a thumbs up, Jack?
I don't know. Oh, wait, the repeat back.
You keep doing that, you won't make it home.
So, to answer your question, Carol, which was, you shared your disappointment that we were not involved in the process of developing the questions that were going out in the survey. So we're trying to meet a timeline here to have something to City Council in October. We still have a lot of work yet to do. Once we determine what activities we want to move forward with, we have to write a report. We have to decide if individuals on this board will write that report or we're going to hire it out. So in the interest of time, the city moved forward on this based on the conversations we had as a full board and the conversations that Cindy and I had with them. It's not the ideal situation, but it's a situation we're in trying to meet the agenda. I have had a couple conversations with the mayor. She is very anxious to see what we're doing and stresses the importance that we need to meet our deadline.
This is the third time it's been on our agenda. We've had plenty of time to do some of what it is, as you said, we didn't have time to do.
Well,
We should not be making decisions outside of our meetings, and I hope that we don't do this in the future.
there were no decisions made outside of that. They took this action based on conversations we had as a full board that we needed this information. They made the decision to move forward with this firm to try to gather that information because they did not have the resources internally to take that on.
Okay, so it's not anything that we have anything to do with. I mean,
We
we've
do,
not made-
because we asked them to help us with that
Yeah, but
information.
we've not made a decision, we've not taken a vote to go down this path. We've had discussion, but we've not
We have
paid
asked
for
them,
it.
no, we're not, and that's on the agenda tonight to
Okay,
discuss.
all right. What is it that we hope to gain with the results of this survey? And I would like a copy of the survey.
The results is what the board has said to the city is we need help with an outreach to the property owners in this area to see what we can do in the area of urban renewal to assist and move this area forward. To do what we're charged to do by the city to accomplish, which is to take the monies that we are receiving in either TIF or sales tax and use that to improve this area.
Okay. Can we get a copy of the survey?
So I just want to be super, super clear. It's not a survey, it's a set of interview questions, and
Okay.
those were administered as an interview. Because I know we've said survey a lot, and that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. I can run through the questions with you tonight
If
and
you
then,
just-
and then,
if you just
and then
email
send
them.
it electronically.
Yeah.
Or I
How
can,
many questions are there that
so
you have?
there are 6 questions.
Could you please read the
Okay, so
questions?
the first question that was asked was that over the last 3 years, has your business improved, stayed the same, or declined? The next question was, what are the general strengths of operating your business in this area? What, if any, are the issues in this area? Are there any specific impediments that negatively impact your ability to do business in this area? And what are any desired or needed physical improvements to the area?
And is it going
And
to,
then other comments, right? Like, so it's meant to be conversational.
is it going to property owners or business owners or both?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joseph.
Yeah, so it happened, that's fine. I guess there was an issue of communication though, because 3 meetings ago or 2 meetings ago, it was announced, here's a contract, they want us to know if we can contribute to payment. You said contract for what? And then we said we would like more information and we'd like to know if we can contribute to the questions. And then at the next meeting, we said we would like to contribute to the questions, and we were told Kathleen will be at the next meeting so we can discuss the interview or the survey. And then Kathleen is here saying the survey is done. So I think since 6 weeks ago we were asking for the opportunity to give input. If it was impossible, then that's the way that it was.
I mean, I literally got the request the day before the meeting. I had not had a chance to reach out to Kathleen or Mark before our meeting, and it came up as a side thing in our meeting. I did not make it an agenda item or discussion item because I wasn't prepared. I wasn't aware. I wasn't sure of the scope of the work, and so the same questions you have. But it came up somehow. I can't remember now what it was, but it came up during the course of our meeting, and it was discussed very lightly. But again, as I stressed at that point, I hadn't had a chance to talk with either Kathleen or Mark to get the specifics of what was this, where this came from. Kathleen was unable to join us at our last our study session to talk about this. And by the time I finally got a full understanding of where it was, the wheels were already in motion.
Kevin, I would say that, it's regrettable, and I share the concern there. In fact, I think I asked the question, why should we pay for something that we didn't design? But I think the questions that have been asked are very good foundational questions. So as we get the results of those surveys back, I think we can build on those. And if we feel we need to make contact with individuals because we felt there was an open door or possibility there, we can certainly follow up on that. If, as was earlier indicated, there's not a whole lot there, then there may be no need for that. So let's take what we've got and go from there. I agree with Joe's comment about the way this is going, and we are where we are. So let's go with it.
We're a board that meets 2 weeks at most right now. I don't expect that we're going to be able to manage every detail, and we don't have a staff, so we rely on the city, and city staff will have to make judgments, and that's a reality that I'm grateful for because we're not the ones making that.
And I think what everybody has to also keep in mind is with urban renewal, this is a partnership with City Council and the city. About half, if not more than half, of the urban renewal boards in the state of Colorado are the city councils. Because if you're not aligned, then you're either fighting against each other, or you're not doing the work that the city needs done. So I think this was one of our attempts, at least on my part, to work with the city, reach out to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're working for the same goal and working in the same direction. So please keep that in mind as we have these discussions.
We didn't at our board meeting really have any understanding of how we were going to contact the property owners and how we were going to get out to do that. So when we met with Kathleen and Mark, when Kevin and I did, that was kind of what we brought forward, is this is what we need to do. So I think that, they took it and I think did a good job of coming up with the questions based on what we had talked about, and also making sure that there was both a questionnaire that they could talk to, and also that there was contact with the property owners and the business owners. And I think that's what we're probably going to see, and that's what's going to be most helpful when we get the report.
Great.
Okay. So Kathleen, our next agenda item is the contract with EPS. Can you speak to why the city chose to partner with EPS on this initiative? What the goals are, both for achieving LIFT's goals and possibly any of the goals that the city may have with this outreach, and then the terms of the contract, so we fully understand that. Just high level, this is what the contract is. Here's what they read, great, what we're looking to get out of this agreement. And the end product should be X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, well, and the most important thing that was communicated to the city during that meeting was timing, right? Being able to have these completed by July, because it does take some time to pull together that analysis, and as you're up against an October timeline, that's having that information in August is critical. So that was one piece of that. The opportunity to have that continuity for the business and property owners of someone that, you know, a firm that they would have met a couple of years ago as part of that business or outreach component, made it a pretty easy choice in terms of doing that. And also the fact that they have a little bit of context and history to kind of have those interviews be more successful. So those were pieces. I think we're also, you know, in the event that this information wasn't going to be used by Lyft or wasn't going to be helpful, what it also creates for us is just sort of a little microcosm of what's happening in the business community. Part of our desire next year is to really sort of get a better understanding of an economic model, both in the context of as a project comes in and understanding its economic significance, and really building on the goals that are set out in what is now a proposed comprehensive plan and a transportation master plan. So I think a lot of that continuity, you know, just played its role. So the scope was really defined by, you know, sitting down and scripting out that piece, getting them out in the field as soon as possible, which is always a challenge with summer schedules, both here at the city, their own schedules. I know the project manager's on vacation this week. Otherwise, I might have pressed him really hard to can we get some sneak peek at the results? But just knowing that we wanted to turn around that as quickly as possible. So a pretty, you know, straightforward scope in terms of doing that and just getting the work done. We had set aside 2 Mondays. The vast majority was done that, I think it was the 29th was the last Monday in July. And so we set aside this past Monday in the event that there's any sort of follow-up on the ground, so.
Do you have any sense or any early indications of the percentage-wise of property owners or business owners they were able to connect with?
Yeah, that's just not a question I had asked, knowing that the full report is coming. And we had kind of set the expectation that, you know,
And are they committed to be here at our study session in 2 weeks?
From my understanding, they could be available to present those reports. It would just be a matter of if that works in terms of your agenda, and obviously the sooner we confirm that, the better. But I had asked them to prepare that report by the 15th, so that if that's something that should be included in your packet, we're timed right.
That would be my intent, that we would have them here at a study session for that study session. I'd also ask if you could send that to me for distribution to the board or to all the board members prior to at least several days prior to our meeting, so we have a chance to review it and we come prepared for that study session. Carol?
Kathleen, can you also maybe check with economic development and see if they have some economic statistics for that area? I don't know if it's easy enough for them to isolate the properties in the urban renewal area, but kind of give us some background economic data and current. I mean, we know their sales tax has gone up, but what other economic indicators are we tracking in the city besides sales tax revenue? And if we are tracking anything, I'd like to see before and after.
Okay, and I can have that conversation with our city manager to see what's possible. I think that, you know, timing is going to be a little challenging for us, in all honesty. I would imagine that we might see some of that in essence with the APS report. So it may be that we look and see what we've got, and if there are any gaps, then we'll try and figure out in terms of timing here how we help you fill those in, or what actions you can take as a board to get those gaps filled in.
And the other thing that I thought was going to be forthcoming is some kind of a report on the infrastructure needs that are over there that are not being funded.
Right, so that is a piece of the to-do list that I didn't address, so thanks
Okay.
for bringing that up. So when we met on May 6th, one of the questions you had was whether or not Public Works was pursuing any infrastructure projects over there. And so what I've learned from our staff is that there is nothing anticipated, either in the shorter or long term. And so, because I think your concern was if you were to add some piece of infrastructure, you know, if they were going to be doing work in the next sort of couple of year horizon, then, you know, would yours have staying power then? And so what we heard is that there's not much happening over there, and so I've
And
had
there's
to follow
nothing
this.
that needs to be done that just can't be funded right now?
No.
Okay, good.
Did, I know when Cindy and I met with you, one of the things, I don't know, did Mark follow up with them on utility burial, whether that had been done in that area, or was that still a need?
Well, so it is, it has not been done. It's not also not been identified necessarily as a need. So,
But it has not been done yet in that area.
right.
So the city has asked us to partner with them and pay for half of this work. Would like to have a motion to do so, authorizing us to pay half of this.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
So was there a real motion, or did you kind of word the motion?
I think I kind of worded the motion, so can somebody word the motion?
You want to put a dollar figure in it?
It is
Probably, that's
45,
what I'm thinking, 4550 would be good.
45.50, yeah.
Yeah, I move that we participate in this contract and pay half of the costs. So it would be $45.50 that we would be paying, and the city would pay similar.
Thank you.
I guess my question is it a fixed cost or are there extras that could be added?
No, we set it up as a fixed cost because of both the timeline and the scope of work.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay, we have Member Rizak, Rychecki, Seiler, Christensen, Henderson, and Hopping were for. Member Orino was against. Thank you. So next, I have asked the new city attorney, Reed Betzing, to join us to introduce himself and kind of give his background and answer any questions we may have at this time.
Good evening. As mentioned, my name is Reed Betzing. I was recently appointed the city attorney on, I think it was July 6th, but my start date was on July 22nd. So I have been here for a whopping 2.5 weeks. And during that time, I have spent an inordinate amount of time in meetings trying to meet with various department heads and city staff to get up to speed as best as I can regarding a lot of the issues that are going on with the city of Littleton, as well as the various projects that the individual departments have been working on. So I think I've made good progress. Obviously, I have stayed abreast of what's been going on in the city of Littleton, including LIFT, for a few months as I prepared for my interviews and watched planning commissions and city councils and did a lot of that stuff. By way of background, I've been an attorney for about 18 years, and I would say 14 of those have been involved in municipal law. The last 12 of those have been with the city of Arvada. And with the city of Arvada, I represented just about every department within that city. One department that I didn't represent was the Arvada Urban Renewal Authority. However, that said, I had a lot of interaction with Arvada's Urban Renewal Authority from weekly meetings as they discuss projects to a lot of the city's projects were also in conjunction with work that the Arvada Urban Renewal Authority was doing. So as it related to TOD developments or other urban renewal areas that had been identified, a lot of my work with Public Works, as well as the Planning Department, Engineering Department, there had to be a very close partnership and understanding in terms of what urban renewal was trying to accomplish, as well as what the various departments were doing. So there was a close partnership in terms of getting those projects off the ground. But I have a pretty good familiarity with urban renewal law. I would not consider myself an expert today. I'm still getting acclimated to your plans. I obviously have some history with how some of the urban renewal areas had folded. And we currently have this one. So I've been reading the urban renewal plan, and I'm happy to, and I'm looking forward to working with you all as the Urban Renewal Authority identifies what they can do in this particular area going forward. So if that spurs any exciting questions from anyone of the attorney.
The attorney doesn't have an attorney question?
I don't.
They're free.
I don't presume to call myself an attorney in Colorado.
So I would say going forward, in my effort to better help the authority, if there are questions that come up, legal questions, and I know the authority has had their share of attorneys kind of popping in and popping out over the last few years, and you've already received probably more opinions than you want from attorneys, but going forward, and I understand in speaking with the mayor at this Friday meeting that there is kind of a tight deadline in terms of trying to meet this. I want to say it's an October date in which the authority is planning on meeting with the city council and presenting ideas going forward for purposes of this urban renewal plan. So whatever I can do and whatever questions that I can answer to help facilitate that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I mean, that's why I'm here.
Do you intend, I interrupted you.
Oh, go ahead.
So, is it your plan to attend the LIFT meetings regularly, or just whenever you think something might come up?
I will be honest with you. My role with LIFT has changed in terms of what my understanding was coming in and what I've been told it was. So yes, I do plan on coming to the LIFT meetings going forward. I understand that LIFT has retained Mr. Malcolm Murray, and I believe Mr. Malcolm Murray's role in regard to LIFT is to work on those items in which there may potentially be a conflict between, say, the city and LIFT. The loan document in terms
That's
of,
true. Yeah.
Of renegotiating the loan terms or anything like that, whatever city council decides going forward, or perhaps some sort of financing arrangement that LIFT comes to going forward. I believe that's my understanding of Mr. Murray's role.
I only ask because absolutely what you just said is correct as far as the
I'll
outside.
take any validation I can get.
But the question was as to yourself. Obviously, you're a very valuable resource, and in the past we had a city attorney who attended, and it was very common as we just went through the business to suddenly turn to him and say, does that sound right? Like, is that the order of the way this is supposed to go? Or how would we usually do this? Or whatever. And he'd go, well, in my experience, X or Y. And that was super useful. And so if you were available for that kind of thing, great. If that's not within our contemplation or our budget, also great. I was just wondering, what's the shape of things?
Well, again, the city has offered in the past, and I don't think that's changed, that, we can refer to the city attorney for any advice and direction we need that is not in conflict with the city. I would hope that he can join us, if possible, because again, like you said, there are times where even just a procedural thing we have a discussion about, and it's good to get that clarification.
And he might just know it just by dint of his expertise, yeah.
Yeah, so.
And if you disagreed with me, you can obviously go call Mr. Murray and get his opinion regarding it. But I think it would be helpful if I were to attend, especially going forward over these next few months, especially as LIFT starts identifying kind of some sort of plan going forward, or short term at least. Obviously Mr. Ralph is next door to me, so I can obviously report to him on what happened and probably have closer communication in terms of at least what I'm seeing and what LIFT is identifying and perhaps needs that the city may be able to offer going forward.
Carol?
Have you ever worked in a situation with an urban renewal authority, either as city attorney or with an urban renewal authority like us, that has a plan without an identified project?
Well, typically the plan has the project in it in terms of the steps and the thoughts going forward. I don't know if I could say that I would be 100% familiar with the particular types of plans. And, generally there's a pretty clear vision in terms of a particular urban area that makes up part of the plan. I'm not sure if that's something that the LIFT board has been struggling with in terms of what's the vision for this area. But, in Arvada, there were pretty clearly defined areas in which I don't think it took a great deal of imagination to understand what was needed in those particular areas. So I don't know if I can answer your question in terms of, I've read the plan for this particular area. I don't know if the plan has led to a clear vision for everyone, and perhaps that's what everyone has been struggling with.
Our problem is we don't have a project. That's why we're in this conundrum of trying to figure out what to do. And I think it's a little unusual. I just wondered if you had experience. It doesn't sound like it.
No, and I would say that with the urban renewal plans that were in the last jurisdiction I was in, I would say they were somewhat general in nature as they started out. They would like to have multifamily in a certain area. I mean, all of them are somewhat similar in the respect of wanting, some amount of commercial, residential, and just how does that look like when it actually comes into fruition? How does that look like, depending on the developer that perhaps you start working with? They may have a completely different vision for that particular location or that particular plat that they're working with. So I can tell you over the years, it doesn't happen quickly all the time. There's any number of developers who have come in with ideas that haven't worked, they haven't penciled out based upon whatever incentives they were getting. It hasn't worked for the vision of that particular plan for that location, and so it's kind of hit and miss sometimes, as I'm sure you found, at least the city of Littleton has found over the years.
No, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Appreciate you coming in.
I'll be over there if you need me.
Okay.
It's nice meeting you.
Looking forward to working with you.
Good to meet you. The other I had on here was other directions. I thought I'd have something else that we could discuss today, but I don't right now. Does anybody else have anything that, they woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and came up with a great idea? or we're up dealing with a small child?
I wanted to resume what we spoke about at the last meeting regarding the few small committees that have been discussed, and some of which were specifically proposed by Bill. I don't know if any of those have anything to talk about yet, but I wanted to ask that question.
So as a reminder, committees that were recommended, that was in,
At the end of the...
We had it on the 25th.
I think it was someplace. I ripped them out for another discussion with somebody else.
Well, the ones that I recall, there was finance.
Right?
Yes.
There was one that was dedicated for contributing ideas to the survey or other means of gathering input. We had talked about the value of, even if we have information available through other sources, we talked about the value of having community members to come to. And those were the two that I thought. And there was a documents committee, yeah, as well. That, those are the three that I recall.
There was, building that document.
I do, and we had financing, we had outreach and cooperative teams. What's allowed or is possible in overall coordination before, so I wasn't here for the meeting, so, I don't know how it got handled.
So I think some of the things are a little premature because we don't have clear vision moving forward on what we're going to do. I think after our next, the study session, I'm hoping we can get some things out of that would help us move forward. The outreach committee part, we've already done that. I mean, we're doing that through the agreement with EPS. I think once we hear their presentation, that may spark the need to establish that committee to follow up with some of those things. There's some opportunities there that need to be further explored. Unless, I think the only one that I came away thinking is that it was worthy to begin discussions was finance. I know Jack had been doing some outreach in that area. Not sure if he has anything to report at this point.
I do.
Okay. Based on his report, we could, Jack and one other member could be as part of that to work on developing those leads and directions.
I do think that even though the survey has already happened, I do think it would be worthwhile to begin contemplating what we're going to do in terms of outreach, because we wait till the study session and get inspired or not. It's a couple weeks later before the ball gets rolling, again referring to our timeline. So I would support that committee being formed and moving forward, coming up with a suggestion, and or us discussing whether or not we want to plan to have a session for citizens to come and let us know what they think. And like was discussed at the last meeting, even though a lot of that information could be ascertained by looking at the Bellevue stuff, looking at this survey, I think it would go a long way to create goodwill to have that meeting, so there's a value to it beyond the information that I think could be gleaned from it. So that's the main reason to have it. And that we can begin planning that now.
So are you talking about the same people who are being surveyed?
No, I think we were talking more along the lines of business owners and or residents.
So larger.
Affected by it,
Larger group, yeah.
Yes, okay, so a different group.
Yeah.
I actually don't think any of these topics is premature. I think if we keep kicking this can down the road, we're going to get the input from the property owners, and we're not going to know what to do with it.
All right, we can, all right, then I would entertain nominations for people to be on a communications committee or a outreach committee. And we'll start with that, and then some of the other, and then it probably would not be a bad idea to start meeting and coming up with some objectives and some things. One of the things we discussed before, and that was part of the challenge when we started this discussion about outreach, is it has to be, we have to figure out how we do that where it just doesn't, that we try to get a cross-sectional of the community in that area and not just some of the same individuals. I think we know what their opinion is. I think we know what their views are. I would like to hear from people we don't necessarily hear at our meetings or that go to city council. I think part of that plan has to be, how do we get the citizens and property business owners engaged that aren't normally engaged in this process?
I would like to be on that committee.
Joseph? Okay, then I will appoint Joseph and Cindy on that committee. And then we talked about a finance committee. Jack has already begun work on that. Is there anybody?
Anybody dare to partner with me?
I would love to.
Jack,
Yes.
what would you think that the partnership, I would like to be involved in the,
Well, we're just gonna.
what's allowed or possible. If what you're looking at doesn't require a bunch of time, then I would be happy to work with you.
Most of the time is trying to get to the right person in the banks that I'm talking to. This last time it took 3 weeks to find the right contact in San Francisco. Even though I had the local contacts, a series of vacations, jury duty. Then it was like about a 20-minute conversation on the phone with somebody that does a lot of municipal financing. And his answers probably weren't too encouraging.
I'd be happy to do legwork, but you need to be the one to have the discussion. If
Yeah,
I find the one to help you.
But we'd be on the phone together.
So if you tell me what leads to follow, I'll be
Yeah,
happy to do
yeah.
that unless somebody else would like to do that.
It just isn't, you gotta just keep tracking it down, you gotta find the right person, and I haven't found the right local contact yet.
Okay.
Even though I know people in this bank, but, well, that's the way it goes. You just gotta keep going.
It's just summer. That's, yeah.
That's part of the challenge we're having.
Yeah, because you gotta wanna find the answer, but, and one answer may not be the right one, but I sense that I'm gonna get the same answer over and over, because that's kind of how I would understand how to do it.
One possibility is, I forget the name of the building, it's about to open on Main Street, the new building across from the View House. And Vic is the branch manager, I don't know what his title is, but he was with Colorado Business Bank on Main Street. And I talked to him months ago, I think it was even before I was on the LIFT board, about getting involved in the community, just in a general sense. And they're very anxious to do that. They're new to town. So that's
There's something called the Community Reinvestment Act.
right.
And the Examiner's grade banks on that annually.
Okay.
And a small local bank has a higher desire to help their local community. Large banks can spread that CRA out to larger areas.
But they're new to the area, and
Okay, if you can give me the contact, we'll be
I'd
happy.
be glad to provide you the contact.
Yeah,
So,
because with our income stream, we either gonna get a little bit of money, or we can get a lot of money. It's interesting.
Bill, do you want to work with Jack on that then?
I'll just provide the contact if you're going to do it, because Jason and I are sitting here, we're the last two that haven't gone on a committee, and there's one.
And there's another one, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll put, I put Jack and Carol on that.
Now, that was my second choice. If we're limiting ourselves to one committee, then I will not, I would prefer to be on what's allowed and or possible committee.
Then we'll take that, because, we'll see how it fleshes out on the other ones. We'll put you in there right now, and we'll see what comes out.
Okay.
I take no umbrage if I'm the only one on my committee, believe me.
Okay, so there was two more documents, and then what we can do, what's possible in the.
And I recall with the what's possible one, we thought we need to have a proposal before we analyze that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And part of that, and again, I think when we get into that one, and we start looking at a project or whatever possibility is, I think that's going to be more of a legal request of, an opinion saying, is this allowed within the urban renewal statute? Is it allowed within our plan? And I think we want a more legal opinion at that point than just us sitting around the table saying, well, I think we can do it, and then we find out, a week later or 6 months later, oh no, you can't do that, So, I'm sorry?
That's what we have Reed for. So.
Yes, so I kind of want to hold off on that one, because I'm not sure, again, there's other work that has to be done.
Okay.
That, and this is an area where once we maybe get some ideas, then those are fleshed out, we would turn that over for an opinion from the attorney, whether it's a city attorney or who we have on retainer, or who we've engaged with. So the other one then is the documents.
What is documents?
Well, we started the documents, we were working on, and we never fully adopted that document that Jack, who else was on there?
Oh, the application.
Application, well, any documents. If let's say out of this, we have a matching grant program, and I've used this example many times. What would that application look like? Is it modified from our, a big construction project like that Jack was working, and who was with you on that?
These two.
Yes, yeah, Carol and Joseph were working with together. Or that if there's something else, if there's a document, some sort of an application process, they would work on that. So really, that work really would not start until we say we want to move forward with this. But the other part we have to talk about is, October, we have to have a report to City Council to present to them. We have to have a discussion here soon, whether that's undertaken by members of this board to write out, depending on, again, what we decide could be very lengthy, or do we engage someone to do that for us?
I'm sure that, and I'm happy to help with that. Yeah. What date in October are we talking about?
We don't have a date set up. I have that on my agenda to reach out to start, so we can get that on our calendars.
It's the last week of October, looks good.
That's what I think.
Me as well.
I think October 2020, right? I just keep.
No, it's October this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, no.
So I do need to reach out to the mayor so that we start getting that under everybody's.
Jack went to the trouble of doing the last big writing project, and I'd be happy to help with this one.
Well, you are the resident author, so.
It's a complicated word, but yes, sure.
Okay.
As long as it's closer to the November part of October than the September part of October, then yes.
The 16th.
The 16th, I already can tell you I'm not going to be here. So, of course, that doesn't mean I can't turn in a document. Just hand it over. And
So for anybody else on the document committee?
I'll help with that.
Okay. So I will appoint Bill and Jason to that committee, and we'll have further discussions as we get going. If it's, again, if we've got a lot, we have to write out and document what we're going to do moving forward. Then we'll have to see if other additional resources have to be brought in.
Kevin, I want to go back and clear my mind. You are wanting to wait to review the law and the plan about what's allowed and what's not, or what's possible?
Correct. If we want to, if the plan comes out, I'm good being really wild here, and said, okay, we want to buy property that's outside the urban renewal. Now, we all know we can't do that. But let's just say we all lose our mind for the evening and we decide this is what we want to do. Before we go down that path, we would turn to Mr. Betzing and say, can we do this? And I'm sure his opinion would come back, no, you can't buy the property that's a mile down the road. That's not within the urban renewal. So I'm not sure what that committee would do if we don't have a legal standing to do that. I mean, to consider whatever it is we're trying to move forward with.
I think there's enough meat in our plan and and in the urban renewal law that we can have a page of questions already formulated about what we can and can't do? Or what does the plan allow? Does this plan written in this language, does it allow us to do X, Y, and Z? And I think we need to have that basis of understanding, so when we get the feedback from EPS, and if there's been something that's been identified, that we already have an idea of what we can and can't do.
Again, I believe that's a legal opinion, and I'm not willing to move forward in that direction. I don't see where a committee of lay people making those decisions.
Not making decisions, asking the questions for the legal person to respond to.
We don't know what we're asking the question of, though.
Well, I have enough questions
I'm sure you do, Carol.
about,
I'm sure you do.
And-
So at this point, I do not think it's prudent for us to do so. So we're going to
I
table
think
it.
we're
Okay,
not gonna make our deadline.
that may be another issue, but it's not because of that. It will not be because of that. So, comments, reports. Carol, do you have any?
Nope.
Okay. Cindy?
No.
Jason?
No.
Bill? No. Joseph? Jack?
Okay. Well, as I said, I finally got a hold of the right guy to talk about, and he got me all excited because he said with our income stream, we might be able to borrow up to $3 million.
Wow.
Yes. However, here is what I figured he would say. So how solid is your income stream? Well, I said, well, the city has to tell us once a year that they'll give us the money. He said, well, then you better figure out how to get the city to guarantee that you're going to get the money each year. So that's the kicker, and I don't know if the city can do it, if it takes a vote of the people because it'd be indebting the city or whatever else, but that's kind of it. So anywhere, based upon our discussion, which, you know, it was long enough, our income at between $80,000 and $100,000 is pretty solid in terms of being good collateral for municipal debt. We issued municipal debt today, and the interest rates fell this last week. So we're looking at possibly 2.5% on a 20-year amortization, something like that. Probably be 19 by the time we got it done. But that gives us a pretty good chunk of money. So you don't have to think small if the city wants us, if we have a project that the city would like us to pursue and they think that they could at least tell us that all the income that we have been deriving so far would be available to extinguish the debt. That's kind of where I am this first go around. I expect I'll get pretty much the same answers from everybody else because bankers tend to think alike during the same market cycles, but there would be an active market for our debt. I'm feel pretty confident, but I'd like to do some more sampling. One sample isn't, one respondent isn't enough.
That's good initial work, though.
No, that's good, thank you. No, that's not as bad as we thought.
No, it isn't. It's far more encouraging,
Yeah, it's a very encouraging.
Yep.
as long as the city will go along with it.
Well, and we can have those discussions with the
Yeah,
city.
that's right.
But I think, please continue those conversations, maybe work with Bill, get that lead, his contact, have that maybe that's another person you can talk to. But that sounds promising. Okay, I do not have anything tonight, so that
May
meeting
I
is
make an announcement real quick because I forgot during my presentation? I just wanted to make you all aware that there's now a draft comprehensive plan and transportation master plan. It is on the envisionlittleton.org website.
Okay.
So I would encourage you to take a look at those. If you haven't been closely following that process, the city is really looking at the next 20 years and trying to do some of that long-range planning. So I would encourage you to have a look.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And the meeting is adjourned.